Aragorn, son of Arathorn, the true king of Gondor, and Ned Stark, the moral man in immoral times. These two characters have been intentionally crafted to mirror each other and reflect deep convictions about the nature of and result from being a moral person. So, let's see what these two men have to teach us about what it means to be good. This is the Belfast Podcast. I'm Daniel Lee, and today we are going to be talking about Ned Stark and Aragorn from Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones. So, first, we will be diving into Game of Thrones. I guess I've been, at least currently, been kind of treating that first, and so we'll keep up with that pattern at least for now. We'll be talking about Ned Stark and who he is as a character, what he means as a character, for what it means to be a good and moral person, and what happens to good and moral people. And then we'll think similarly about Aragorn and and the way that Tolkien, as opposed to Martin, kind of pitches us a similar problem. So one of the things, as we've already talked about, George R.R. Martin has said intentionally that he loves Tolkien, he admires him, and thinks that Tolkien did a lot of good, especially for the world of fantasy writing, but he disagrees with him philosophically and thinks that a lot of Tolkien imitators do a very poor job of a lot of the tropes that Tolkien sets up. Tolkien's almost archetypal in that sense, and so Martin is right that the archetype of Tolkien's world, when it gets kind of taken on by other people, it becomes much less of a true and robust story. But one of the things that I think Martin doesn't understand is the truth of that story, as I've been articulating. Beyond that, I think Martin has intentionally designed certain characters to reflect other characters within Tolkien's world. So Martin, I think, has designed Ned Stark and Jon Snow, actually, but today we're just going to focus on Ned, to reflect aspects of Aragorn. And I think he's using Ned Stark as a way of wrestling with some of the implications of Aragorn's story and what Martin sees as being true about the nature of reality. And so I want us to spend some time thinking about Ned first, and then we'll move into Aragorn, like I said. So, to start, let's think about Ned's character. Who Ned is as a character. So, Ned Stark, father of a family, Lord of Winterfell, and he is in charge of the North, in charge of maintaining peace in the North, specifically because wildlings north of the Wall will sometimes move down. We actually meet him in a scene where he's executing a deserted Night's Watchman for deserting his post and no longer seeking to keep the wildlings out, seeking to kind of make a life of his own. And so Ned is deeply portrayed as a man of honor from the beginning. The reason that he's executing a deserter is because it's dishonorable to desert your post. You need to be a man of honor, and the reason he does it specifically is because if you're going to demand the life, you need to be the one swinging the sword. He has a phrase that he throws around about that, but that's the general principle. He sees the world as being primarily structured with honored and good principles, and he sees our participation in those as being good and something that's beneficial for everyone. Now, this honorable nature is widely recognized by everyone. In fact, his friend Robert Baratheon, at least I believe it's Robert, who's the king in King's Landing of all of Westeros, he says, "You never could lie for love." And he says this in order to kind of wrestle with and depict Ned's honorable character. The point is, love for Ned is below honor. So it's more important for Ned to be honorable than it is for him to love and be loved, is kind of the way that it's portrayed. And that weighing of alternatives in the story, in particular around Ned's character, is a way of demonstrating priority, and it's a way of pinning certain things to Ned. Now, one of the things I want us to do is I want us to think a little bit about whether or not that characterization is true of Ned Stark. I don't think it is. In fact, I know it's not, and I'm about to play you a clip why. But the truth is that, we'll demonstrate why, but the truth is that Ned can and does lie for love. In fact, two of the biggest decisions that he makes in the entire story are when he lies for the sake of those he loves. So, I'm going to play a scene from the first season, of course, because Ned's in it. And this is a conversation between Robert Baratheon, Ned Stark. I've tried to cut out some of the crude jokes. They're talking about being young men going off to battle. Robert Baratheon is particularly talking about all of the women that he bedded, and he makes reference to someone who Ned loved, despite the fact that Ned was married. Now, if you've watched all the way through, so spoiler alert if you haven't, Luke, I'm looking at you. Ned is said to have fathered an illegitimate son, Jon Snow. That son Jon isn't actually his son. Jon Snow is the son of Ned's sister and Rhaegar Targaryen, Ned's sister Lyanna, who Robert was in love with and started the rebellion against the Targaryens because of her, and Rhaegar kidnapping her. That was Robert's claim, but Rhaegar never actually did kidnap her. Lyanna loved Rhaegar, and they together had Jon. So Jon's not an illegitimate child, not the illegitimate child of Ned. Ned has lied Jon's entire life in order to protect Jon and his sister, and that lie has actually propped Robert up as a king. And Robert doesn't know, because if Robert knew, Robert would probably try and kill Jon. And so Ned's trying to protect him. He's lying for love. And you see it. This scene is viewed in one way if you don't know all of that, and in a very different way if you do. So now that I've said that, let's watch and pay close attention to Ned's reactions to the things that Robert says.
Yours was, Alina? No, you told me once. Meryl? Your best.
Talking about the illegitimate mother.
His mother.
Wyler.
That's it. She must have been a rare wench to make Lord Eddard Stark forget.
He just lied. And you could see in his face, he's like, he doesn't want to look Robert in the eyes. And you think it's because he's ashamed that he did it. It's actually because in the moment he's lying because he never had a lover besides his wife.
His honor? You never told me what she looked like.
Nor will I.
We were at war. None of us knew if we were going to go back home again. You're too hard on yourself. You always have been. I swear if I weren't your king, you'd have hit me already.
And so Ned is caught again between lying and the protection of someone he loves. You never could lie for love is actually the least true thing about Ned Stark. And he does want to protect his honor, right? He's an honorable man, but his honor is always driven and is only ever superseded by his love for his family. And so it's not true. not true at all, actually, that he doesn't lie for love. And it's not true that honor is the most important thing to him. It's not true at all. So that doesn't mean that honor isn't important to him. It isn't important to him, or that he wants to be dishonorable, will be dishonorable. He is still a person who's always going to try and do what is good and right, no matter what. And he has a very hard time in King's Landing when he gets into the dirty politics of the entire royal household. Especially when he finds out that not only has he been lying about having an illegitimate child himself, but all of the king's children are actually not the king's children at all. And Robert Baratheon's wife, Cersei Lannister, Cersei Baratheon, I guess, has been, one, unfaithful, and two, lying about their identity the entire time. And so I'll play a clip of Robert, who now knows this information, is sharing this information because he needs help navigating the situation in order to save his own life, save the life of the king that he now believes is in danger, and try to leverage the situation, but also, not just leverage the situation, find justice in the situation, but also protect innocent life, particularly the lives of Cersei and her children. So he has them in mind here.
What you suggest is treason.
Only if we lose.
Make peace with the Lannisters, you say? With the people who tried to murder my boy?
We only make peace with our enemies, my lord. That's why it's called making peace.
No. I won't do it.
So it will be Stannis and war.
There is no other choice. He is the heir.
So it's Stannis or war. You only make peace with your enemies. It's treason, right? So Ned proposes, hey, this is the situation we're in. Littlefinger, this guy right here, who will come back again in a future episode. Littlefinger's like, well, I think it's best to not back the proper heir, because then if King Robert dies, his brother becomes the proper heir, not his children who aren't actually his children. Ned is like, no, it's the right thing to give the throne to his brother. Littlefinger's like, I don't care. It's advantageous to us for us to give the throne to the illegitimate children. And Ned's like, that's treason. That's straight up treason. Littlefinger's like, what does it matter? What does it matter?
So why did you call me here? Not for my wisdom, clearly.
Not going to listen to him. What does Ned want?
You promised Catelyn you would help me. The Queen has a dozen knights and 100 men-at-arms. Enough to overwhelm what remains of my household guard. I need the gold cloaks. The city watch is 2,000 strong, and sworn to defend the King's peace.
Look at you. You know what you want me to do. You know it has to be done. But it's not honorable, so the words stick in your throat.
So Ned struggles to express exactly what he wants. Not entirely. I think that's actually kind of a mischaracterization on the part of Littlefinger. Ned is saying, hey, I want you to get me enough forces to survive this situation. And Littlefinger is like, what you should want me to do is kill the Lannisters. Ned doesn't want that. He wants to show them mercy. In a different scene, Littlefinger says that you wear your honor like a suit of armor. It makes you slow and unable to maneuver these political situations. And so, because you are unable to maneuver well, you're going to die, is what he's saying, basically. You're not going to do well because your honor is slowing you down. Now, Ned, one of the things I want to point out about this scene is Ned is actually being crafty, okay? He's planning things, and he's wanting to be honorable and honest. He's not seeking after his own self-interest and gain. He's seeking after what he perceives to be the right thing. But he's also not...
When the Queen
well,
proclaims one king and the Hand proclaims another, whose peace do the gold cloaks protect? Who do they follow? The man who pays them.
The man who pays them. So it's either honor or money. And Littlefinger respects the one. Ned respects the other. Now, but it's not that Ned's being naive, right? Ned knows this is a dangerous situation. And it's not that he's not being wise. He's meeting with someone who he thinks can help him. He's not being as shrewd, and he's not being as crafty as he should be, because what he ends up doing is he goes to Cersei and he tells her, hey, I know the truth. I'm coming for you. Particularly, I'm going to tell Robert, and he's going to come for you. You should leave before that happens. And that was his mistake. Had he not done that, I think he probably would have survived. Now, realistically, he's too good of a character to continue living, right? He and Jon Snow both die for being good people in Martin's world, and good people never, and this will be my consistent refrain throughout these episodes, good people will never live and succeed in Martin's world. That's just the reality of the situation. But Ned wasn't being entirely without wisdom. He was not being as cunning as he needed to be, though. And so I want to introduce the idea that Ned in most of these situations is actually, he's not being too good to survive in King's Landing. He's being gentle as doves, but he's not being wise as serpents. And Jesus commends both. Commends both. And so it is not, I don't think, the case that being good equals defeat and death. But that is what Martin does with Ned Stark's story. It's what Martin does with most of the stories that we encounter in his world. So, we've seen that Ned is willing to lie for love. They mischaracterize the way that he orders his values. We've seen that he isn't exactly as naive as many people think he is, though he's not nearly as crafty, as wise, and as shrewd as he needs to be. And he is, but he is still an honorable person, and an honorable person that genuinely seeks the good of everyone, even his enemies, right? Because that's the thing that gets him killed, is he's looking out for Cersei Lannister and primarily her children. He doesn't want them to die just because Robert will be angry and seek to kill them. So he's betrayed by Littlefinger, right? And this is where he was crafty enough to go to someone, but he wasn't crafty enough, and this is portrayed, I think, a little bit better in the books than in the movie. He was crafty enough to try and position himself well, but he miscalculated the motives of everyone around him because he didn't realize how entrenched the corruption and the self-seeking was in King's Landing. He was, in some sense, too good to see it. He couldn't let himself see it. And because he wasn't willing to participate, he wasn't seeing it. And so in that sense, he was a little too good and definitely too naive, but he wasn't blind. And I think a lot of people characterize him as blind. So he's betrayed by Littlefinger. He ends up in prison, and he has a really interesting conversation with one of the, who's called the Master of Whispers, Varys. So we'll watch this really interesting scene, because again, it will demonstrate something about the way Ned's values are ordered and why.
He is utterly without mercy.
Stannis Baratheon is Robert's true heir. The throne is his by rights.
Sansa pleaded so sweetly for your life, it would be a shame to throw it away.
So he reiterates, Varys is just saying, hey, support Joffrey, the illegitimate child, to the throne, and everything will be okay. And he's like, my honor won't let me do that. Stannis is the true heir. That's what's right. And Varys is like, well, dude, that's not good. You're not helping your case right now. If you keep down this road, you will die. You will die for your honor.
Cersei's no fool. She knows a tame wolf is more use to her than a dead one.
You want me to serve the woman who murdered my king, who butchered my men, who crippled my son?
I want you to serve the realm. Tell the Queen you will confess your vile treason. Tell your son to lay down his sword and proclaim Joffrey as the true heir. Cersei knows you as a man of honor. If you give her the peace she needs and promise to carry her secret to your grave, I believe she will allow you to take the black and live out your days on the wall with your brother and your bastard son.
You think my life is some precious thing to me? That I would trade my honor for a few more years of woe?
Ned values his honor more than his life. And that is a crucial thing to recognize. His honor is more valuable than his life. Many things are more valuable in his life. But the question is, which is more? His love for those that he cares about, or his own honor? And many people portray Ned as only caring about his honor. I don't think that's the case.
You grew up with actors. You learned their craft, and you learned it well. But I grew up with soldiers. I learned how to die a long time ago.
Pity. Such a pity. What of your daughter's life, my lord? Is that a precious thing to you?
What of your daughter's life? He ends up confessing to treason, which he didn't commit, in order to save his daughter's lives, and still dies. And so he does lie for love yet again. But the thing in Martin's world is that being good automatically means that you will lose. That's just the reality of it. And so Ned dies because he's unwilling to compromise on the point that the illegitimate children shouldn't take the throne because it's not honorable. But those are the ways his actions are contributing. He actually dies because everyone around him is a monster. And so he sacrifices himself for his children. Now Varys, his main thing is he wants peace for the people of the realm. And so he's saying if you lie here, it will keep peace and save lives because it won't start a war. And he's right to some degree. But, and this is where Martin's trying to juxtapose different sets of values in order to ask us as the audience the question, who's right? And what Martin believes is being a good person means that you will cause war and suffering and death, not just your own, but the deaths of those you love. Because in this war, Ned's son dies, Ned's wife dies, and ultimately a lot of other people die too. And so for Martin, being good means being stupid. Though again, I don't think Ned is quite as stupid as people claim he is. At best, he's wise, but his wisdom is thwarted because he's not willing to do shrewd, deceptive, and somewhat evil things. Because that's ultimately what can keep you alive in a situation like that. You have to become like the people around you. Evil, deceptive, deceitful, malicious, in order to survive. Ambitious, in order to survive. Cersei Lannister says that the moment Ned sealed his fate was when he didn't take the Iron Throne for himself when they conquered King's Landing during Robert's Rebellion. And so a lack of ambition, a desire to be honorable, is the thing that gets Ned killed. Again, and I'll defend Ned in being wiser than people give him credit. But for Martin, ultimately, being good means dying. And again, we'll see this with Jon Snow later. Now, Aragorn. How does Aragorn relate to this? I think Aragorn is the exact opposite. He is the person who is a good person and succeeds primarily because he is a good person. When it comes to withholding honor, one of the things that Aragorn does is he holds the army of the dead, the ghosts in Dunharrow, to fulfill their oath. And this is one of the ways in which he tries to gain an advantage over Sauron's army. He sacrificially, right? Because the dead do not suffer the living to pass where they dwell. He goes into the caves where the dead dwell, knowing that he and his companions will likely die. But he goes because he knows that they need reinforcements in order to beat Sauron's army. So his act of going is already an act of self-sacrifice because it is very much a risk of his life. But his offer to them is, if you come and fulfill your oath, I'll set you free.
Now you must die.
I summon you to fulfill your oath.
None but the King of Gondor may command me. That line was broken. It has been remade.
The main thing here, right? Only the king can command these men. Aragorn wants them to fight for him to regain their honor. They're surrounded, so despite the fact that Aragorn can, Legolas and Gimli can't do anything to stop these ghosts, Aragorn's sword can actually fight them, but one man against an entire army, they don't stand a chance. And so this is a sacrificial move, and Aragorn is actually offering them the chance to be honorable. They're dishonorable. In fact, they were cursed because of their lack of honor. They're undead, they're ghosts unable to truly be at peace because of their lack of honor. And Aragorn is offering them self-sacrificially, risking himself to, one, win the battle, and two, offer them a chance at regaining their honor and being at peace. Now, Aragorn convinces them, they go with him to the battle, and they completely decimate all of the bad guys, right? Like, just totally win the battle for them. It is the decisive thing that wins them the victory. Now, they stand on the battlefield with their fallen brethren, but also all of the fallen enemies. And Aragorn and Gimli again stand with the ghost men. And this is also a really, really interesting scene, because it's in this moment, right? You already know they're really powerful, but they're really powerful because they're cursed. They're not at peace. And so Gimli realizes something, and I think Aragorn realizes it too. So does Gandalf. Well, I'll just play it, and we can talk about it afterwards.
Release us.
Bad idea. Very handy in a tight spot, these lads, despite the fact they're dead.
You gave us your word.
I hold your oath fulfilled. Go. Be at peace.
Okay. They want to be freed. Gimli's like, yo, dude, we've got a lot more enemies to fight. It could be useful having them around because they do good work. And you can see the ghost guys like, that's dishonest and not what I want to hear. Of course, theoretically, had Aragorn not released them from their oath, they could have killed him potentially. So he might be in a Ned Stark situation there, right? But it's the reverse, right? Because if he doesn't let them go, it's actually more dangerous potentially. More useful, but more dangerous than if he does. Gimli is disappointed that they're not let go. But then Gandalf bows his head to Aragorn, signaling that was the right call. You did the good thing, and you're the king who does good things. And I think that is really, really important. Now, that does mean something. Something potentially difficult. Now, they don't have those reinforcements that they had for the Battle of Pelennor Fields when they fight Sauron for the remainder of this war. In fact, now they have less men than they did when they started because people died in the Battle of Pelennor Fields. And Sauron still has a massive army. So they can't win by strength, probably. The only chance they have, which we've known all along, is for Frodo to get to Mount Doom, and this giant army stands in Frodo's way. So Aragorn makes another self-sacrificial move. Selfless, wise, and good. And this is where we see Tolkien do something interesting. Being wise, shrewd, crafty, tricky, right? Because he tricks Sauron. He uses the Palantir to communicate with Sauron and draw him out, draw all of his forces away from Mount Doom so that Frodo can sneak by. That's tricky. They win by being wise and shrewd, but they also win by being good. These two things are not necessarily opposed, and that's where I think Martin gets it wrong. See, for Martin, being wise and being good are opposite each other. Being crafty and tricky and being good are opposite. Because being good is being naive, being slow, you're in your suit of armor and you can't move around. Being dumb. But for Tolkien, being wise and being good can be and usually are the same thing. And that I don't think we can look past. So, Aragorn draws the forces away from Mount Doom so that Frodo can sneak past, knowing he cannot win. Sauron's philosophy, and this is the thing, not only is Aragorn able to combine wisdom and goodness, but Sauron's philosophy of power actually doesn't allow him to see that this is all a ploy. When he sees Aragorn claiming to be king of Gondor again, when he sees that, he's terrified because he thinks power is being centralized in Gondor again. Sauron's afraid of the power play. And so Sauron panics, drawing his forces away from the thing that protect him most. And so not only for Tolkien is wisdom and goodness combined in the person of Aragorn like they cannot be in Ned Stark, but evil and wisdom are unable to be fully integrated because they are diametrically opposed. So, one last thing, right? Because we talked about Ned and whether or not love or honor outweigh each other. I want us to watch the scene of Aragorn at the Black Gate and think about what value Aragorn weighs most highly. Is Aragorn doing all of this just because he's honorable? Just because he wants to win? Just because he wants success over Sauron and to become king? I don't think he's doing that for any of those reasons. He's not Sauron in miniature trying to become king, and he just so happens to not look evil and hurt people. There's something substantively different about the way that Aragorn relates to the world and others. Similarly, I think actually how Ned relates to the world and others. But this results in something different.
For Frodo.
Why is Aragorn there? 2 words. For Frodo. Yes, he wants to win. Yes, he wants to defend everyone from the evil that is Sauron. But he's there because he wants to give Frodo a chance. He's doing it for Frodo. Merry and Pippin are the first 2 to leave the company after him because they're there for Frodo. Love is also motivating Aragorn, not just honor. And that, I think, is a beautifully profound reality. That wisdom and goodness can be combined in the pursuit of love and win. And for Martin, that's not possible. Ned has to die. Just like Jon Snow has to die. Just like Jon Snow, again, spoiler alert, at the end, when duty and love are pitted against each other again, he picks duty and doesn't end up on the throne because Jon Snow can't, because he's good. Goodness can't win for Martin. Goodness must win for Tolkien, because goodness is baked into the order of reality, as we saw last time. And so, I'll leave us with that. For Tolkien, righteousness wins. For Martin, righteousness is the cause of the downfall of anyone. Power is the final determining factor in Game of Thrones, but the root of destruction in Lord of the Rings.